the hiring process essentially relied on this CV, which was basically just a document of things that we did in the past, right? It was just
Yeah.
a log of our history.
Yeah.
And there had to be a better way. Then we came into 2019. We built this platform, which basically was, instead of using a CV, we replaced the CV with videos. And we said to candidates and employers, let's connect over video. Let's do short recorded videos. Watch the videos instead of reading the CVs, and you will get more information about the candidates, and you'll get to meet them all, much more quickly, and get a lot more data as well than you would have off a CV.
This is Looks Good on Paper, a podcast from Willo about flipping the script on traditional hiring. I'm Ian Chohan, and every episode I put big voices in hiring and work culture through 3 quick-fire questions, speed dating style, to get the habits, trends, and ideas that matter. Welcome to this week's edition of the Looks Good on Paper podcast. I am so excited for today's recording. I can't believe it took 3 seasons to get him on and in the hot seat. I am so excited to welcome our own CEO at Willo, Euan Cameron. He's the co-founder and CEO of Willo, the platform behind this very podcast, and the person I have been trying to get into this chair since season 1. He built Willo on the belief that candidate evaluation needs to be better than the CV, and that better can't just mean better for employers. It has to be better for candidates too. He's here. I'm not letting him leave. Welcome to Looks Good on Paper, Ewan. Talk about a little bit about how you built Willow and what matters most right now for companies when they're hiring.
Thanks, Anita. And yeah, it's crazy that I've not been on it 3 seasons later, but it has been a great podcast for the past 3 seasons. So I don't think you
Thank
needed me anyway.
you.
But I'm here now. And yeah, I mean, I guess if we go back to the sort of founding story of why the platform even exists today, it was really born out of personal frustration with the hiring process. Uh, Many people will know, if you know Willow, many people will know that the founders of Willow, me and the other founders, are dyslexic. And being dyslexic creates lots of challenges when you're applying for jobs. Obviously, you have to be able to write a CV, and you also have to be able to write a cover letter and potentially fill an application form. And all of those things are text based, and all of those things require a lot of additional effort when you are dyslexic. So it was a personal frustration for me that the
Mhm.
hiring process relied so heavily on text and structuring of text. It also just felt to me when I started, when I entered the job market, it just felt to me that there had to be a better way, because I felt really strongly that if I had an opportunity to be seen and heard by an employer, they would be able to understand who I truly was. Whereas I knew when I was sending across my CV, it wasn't doing me justice. And then when I started speaking to other candidates, I realized that I wasn't alone. And I realized, hey, there was actually millions of candidates with dyslexia and millions of candidates with other challenges too. And then that really was what Willow was born out of. It was, started off with a personal frustration, which then I realized was a much bigger problem. And it wasn't just me, thankfully.
Absolutely.
It was
Absolutely.
actually, millions of other candidates around the world. And we all had the same problem. And that problem was the hiring process essentially relied on this CV, which was basically just a document of things that we did in the past, right? It was just
Yeah.
a log of our history.
Yeah.
And there had to be a better way. Then we came into 2019. We built this platform, which basically was, instead of using a CV, we replaced the CV with videos. And we said to candidates and employers, let's connect over video. Let's do short recorded videos. Watch the videos instead of reading the CVs, and you will get more information about the candidates, and you'll get to meet them all, much more quickly, and get a lot more data as well than you would have off a CV. So we built that and launched that in 2019, 2020. COVID came along in 2020 and really changed the world forever.
Worse.
We started to see, obviously, many jobs going remote, and we started to also see employment opportunities going global.
Hmm.
Previously, wanted to work for a company, you needed to be in the same city or town, but
Hmm.
suddenly companies around the world were hiring candidates wherever they happen to live. And that was amazing from an accessibility perspective. So although there was lots of negative, downsides to COVID, lots of horrible things happened during that period. One of the biggest changes for the employment around the world was that candidates suddenly could be employed and get jobs wherever they happen to be. And the beauty of that was that geography was no longer a barrier to employment. which is amazing when you think about it. And the beauty of that is that it stayed today. So even today, organizations all around the world are hiring people wherever they happen to be, just based on their skills and their talent, rather than the location they happen to be in, which is a great place to be.
Love
And then we
that.
also, through the introduction of Willo, realized quite quickly we could actually play a large part in this by breaking down a lot of the other barriers too. So not just geography, but also breaking down barriers like, for example, the ability to read and write. With video, you no longer needed to read and write, but we also started to break down barriers in terms of technology itself. So we built Willow in such a way that candidates could use whatever technology they happen to be using. They might, for example, have really poor Wi-Fi, or they might have a really old device, or they might be using a internet cafe. It didn't really matter. They had the same access as everyone else to apply for those jobs. So we started doing that. We started doing that quite aggressively, and we started to receive lots of funding from investors, which was fantastic. And we got a lot of backing quite early on. Lots of press coverage, Huffington Post, TechCrunch, etc. And
Amazing.
all of that really started to compound. And today we are assessing millions of candidates globally on the platform and connecting millions of candidates with hundreds and hundreds of different employers around the world. So it's really great to see that that's happening, and that's actually creating a real shift, a fundamental shift in the way that candidates and employers can connect.
Oh, amazing. I love that. I think in the past, I've spoken about, when you actually developed and build a product for those in the margins, it actually serves everybody. And that vision, and we talked about just now in the green room that we're at 6 years now for Willows. That idea, something that's a personal frustration turned into something that has become, I think, now everybody sees as the future of how we're screening. And also, not only just screening, but you basically create a way to democratize hiring and also at the same time increase trustworthiness as well. Because I know there's a lot of stuff that we are doing at Willow that makes sure on both ends of the spectrum, candidate and employer feel safe when they're in the hiring process.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think 6 years, we're talking like millions and millions of candidates going through the process, and
Amazing.
millions of candidates experiencing what it's like to not have to send in a CV or drive to an office and, sit in an awkward, uncomfortable interview room in front of a person they've never met before, answering questions that they don't know how to answer. So yeah, it's really amazing to see the impact that, company that was just started out of, yeah, personal frustration.
That's where it starts. I think that's always the spark. But
Yeah.
welcome onto the podcast. I'm really excited. We're going to jump in now, though. So we're going to, the drill, 3 questions, speed dating style. And the first one is, what is the biggest hiring mistake that companies keep making, even though it's clearly not working?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. One of my favorite questions as well. So I'm going to start with the biggest hiring mistake for companies is relying on past experience. So this sort of is related in many ways to the CV or the resume, right?
Hmm.
The CV and the resume, its sole purpose is to basically surface what the candidate has done in the past. There's no forward looking part of a CV. The CV isn't saying I can do this and I can do this really well. It's just saying, hey, I did this and I did that.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of employers still rely on that as a good indicator for what you can do in the future. And that's just not a great way of looking at it. First and foremost, it excludes a huge cohort of candidates, those candidates in early careers that don't have a history of employment. They're immediately excluded from the process.
Hmm.
You can't get a job with many companies because you haven't had a job before.
It's true.
And the irony of that is, how do you get a job in the first place?
The
Um,
paradox.
exactly. Yeah, relying on past experiences is a really poor indicator of success. And doesn't, I think more and more in today's world, it doesn't work. In today's world, what I'm saying is, over the past 6, 10 years, people have started to do other things, right? Like, people go traveling, people are taking breaks, people are experimenting with many different career paths, people are experimenting with hobbies and careers. There's so many things that people did in the past that looking at their past isn't actually a good indicator
So
of
right.
anything. What we
It's
really
not.
want to know is, what's their potential, what do they want to do, what
Mm,
their motivations are moving
mhm.
forward. Just because I made like, just because I worked at McDonald's in the past doesn't mean I have any motivation to work at McDonald's in the future.
It's true.
In fact, that'd
It's
be a
true.
terrible assumption because I don't wanna work in the drive-thru anymore,
It's true.
but I did in the past.
Absolutely. So I guess like it's so tough because I think that, we're in the structure that almost rewards and has created, the need for the resume to like in that past sense. So what are ways that companies can, actually look forward or like encourage candidates to actually show that potential, or how can companies actually support them in sharing that information through the hiring
Absolutely.
process?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you need to essentially start by asking, what do we actually want from this candidate? Like, what do we need them to be able to do and want to do, more importantly? And then link that to the questions that you're going to ask them. So rather than say, "Hey, can you send me a CV, Anita?" which is just a history of what you used to do, I'm going to say to you things like, "Hey, Anita, can you tell me what is actually the motivation for working with customers? What gets you excited about working with customers?" Or, "Hey, you need to tell me a time when you used tools to support customer outcomes, and how would you do that differently now with AI?"
Mm,
Or, you know, "Tell me a time when you've been a customer in the past and you had a great outcome. How did that make you feel?" And really just digging into the passions and the
mhm.
excitement and the motivations, that will unlock so many more doors. Because like I said, just because you did customer success in the past, because it says in your resume, maybe you don't have the motivation to be a customer success anymore.
It's
So
true.
let me ask you questions about whether you're actually motivated to do that moving forward. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, I guess it starts with what you want them to do, thinking about what you
Mhm.
want them to do, what you want them to actually achieve, and then thinking about what questions you need to ask to help extract that information, and then ask the candidates through, at scale, not just a couple of them, but as many as possible.
Mhm.
What do they want to
Absolutely.
do? What's their motivations? What's their evidence as well? So evidence things, for example, like, tell me about things that you've done recently. Tell me about ways that you would solve this, or even pose a problem. One of my favorite ones in sales interviews is, you've got a tricky customer that's ghosting you. Tell me what you would do. No resume
Yeah.
is ever going to tell you that. But if I
Mhm.
ask you that question straight up, you can tell me like, "Hey, so if they're ghosting me, I'm going to go find them on LinkedIn. I'm going to send them a voice note, and I'm going to maybe like, connect with them in a networking event that I know they're going to next week. Be able to speak to them." That's the sort of proactivity, and that's the answer that I'm looking for.
Yes. Yes, and creativity as well. I feel like you can glean so much from that, right? Are they thinking outside the box? Are they going to be able to go and do the thing that they need to, which is close the sale or figure it out, creative problem solving, right? There is no way right now for us to even measure any of that through a resume, right? There isn't. So I just think that like it's no secret, right? Like everybody knows that the resume is not working, the CV is not working for us, but I don't think that they think about how to do it. And this feels like such an easy, thoughtful way to encourage people to show those skills, those softer skills, right? But I think it's so much easier, especially so much easier for people to follow the same routine, follow the things that they're used to, not break free from it. And there is a free fear and hesitancy, I think, as well, that
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
permeates the culture.
I talk about the CV being like a currency. It's the currency for
Mm,
jobs. We typically would, as people, and this is a global challenge as well. It's quite interesting. The CV is a global currency. It's not
mhm.
just a Western currency.
It's
No
true.
matter where you are in the world, when you post a job, the currency to get access to that job is typically to
Yes.
hand it over a CV. There's no
Yes.
change. Like, you put a sign on the window that says hiring for chef. The way that you get that chef job is by translating it with a CV. We
Yes.
give over the CV or the resume. It's such an
Absolutely.
unusual challenge, but it's also just so built into this sort of the way that we do hiring, which I find so interesting because there isn't many business processes that are unanimous globally.
One. That
Like
one
even when you
is
think about like
here.
things like payroll, like
Yeah.
certain countries pay their employees weekly, certain countries pay their employees monthly,
Yeah.
other countries pay their employees over 13 months, even though there's only 12 months in the calendar and you get two payments at the end of the year. Like there's so many business practices that are different around the world. and that's obviously very culturally related
Hmm.
and is pretty ingrained in the culture of that country, and we never question it. But the one that I find interesting is employment and hiring. We have this global currency of CVs, which, like we just spoke about, is actually fundamentally flawed. But to actually change something like that is hard, and that's why we see it cropping up with employers everywhere because it's just so ingrained in the business world. It's just, if we need to hire someone, we must ask for CV.
Absolutely. I love that. I feel like that was like a beautiful soundbite, mic drop line around currencies. I love it. All right, moving on to question number two, Ewan. What's a hidden bias companies unknowingly have even when they think that they're being progressive in their hiring?
Okay, let me think about that one. There's so many biases, and what's interesting, Anita, is that biases can be good and bad. And I also love the fact that biases are a human problem. Technology didn't make biases. Technology hasn't made biases worse. It's still a and the reason that we have biases is basically to make quicker decisions, right? If we didn't
Mhm.
have bias, every decision would be hard because you would walk into a cafe every day and have to just think about which coffee you want to order from scratch. But as we develop biases, we lean towards things, and that
Yeah,
makes decisions quicker. And so that's why biases aren't necessarily always a bad thing. We
yeah.
need biases to do things quickly, otherwise we would always have to decide on the outcome. But when it comes to hiring, biases can creep in, and biases can creep in for all kinds of different reasons. My personal favorite bias, which we should be all aware of, is the bias that we want to hire people that look and sound like us because we know or we believe that we are a safe bet.
Mhm.
And I find that really
Absolutely.
interesting. Like it's
Mhm.
like if I've been at this organization for 10 years, I must be a good person for this organization. The downside is that you end up with an organization that is very narrow-minded. It can be less creative, and it will definitely be less diverse when it comes to the way that it actually solves problems. Willow, as a company, has a very diverse team. And I don't just mean diverse in terms of like race and ethnicity. I mean diverse in terms of cultures too. So we have
Mhm.
teams and colleagues across different parts of the world. The beauty of that is that, as we spoke about earlier, each culture has different ways of approaching things.
Yes.
But the really interesting thing is when you bring all of these different cultures together, they start to clash and they start to
Mhm.
create better outcomes than you could ever imagine before. And
Absolutely.
that's one of the beauties of obviously creating a diverse culture. So yeah,
Absolutely.
looking and hiring and deciding based on people that look and sound like you is definitely one of my number one biases. And when you're aware of it, it's much easier.
Yes.
Like any bias, it's much easier to pick up on. Like, why am I biased
Absolutely.
towards this person? Or why am I biased towards that coffee or
Yes.
that food? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
even, why am I biased towards that destination where I go on holiday? There's always a reason. And when you become aware of it, it's much easier to actually like challenge that reason.
Yeah, and then you actually start, like, checking yourself every single time it comes up, and then you're able to, like, that awareness. But that's one of those things where it's kinda like a known unknown sometimes. Like, I know I have biases, but I never even know when I have it. So it just becomes almost second guess, like second, nature now for me to be like, "Oh, why do I feel that way?" Or checking myself against things. And this is a habit, it's a muscle. What I also wanna say as well, like, we talk about, like, how the diversity of thought actually helps your business and working together, but then also to cater to an increasingly globalized world and audience and clientele outside of maybe where your company is built or where it's from or where the actual like company itself knows and its DNA is. If you're becoming a global company and or you're an enterprise company that's working across many different countries, you also have to cater to those different ideas, diversity of thought, and different people. So having a really good mix of people in your company can speak to that and the challenges of your customers as well. So this is like a brilliant business decision from top to bottom to actually like challenge yourself and those biases you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it really translates through in things like product. If you're building a product with a diverse global team, your product can be sold globally. it doesn't come up against barriers. Whereas if you build a product with a US based team and you try and sell that product in China, for example, you're going to come up against barriers because there's certain things that you just assume. And
Absolutely.
you see that obviously is so interesting and so clear. Like
Yeah.
there's so many, tangible physical pieces of hardware out there where it was clearly designed by maybe, a Western team, or, on the flip hand, like a Chinese or an Asian team, and it's got certain things and it works in a certain way. You have to think globally, and you can't think globally without actually being global.
Absolutely. And now on to question number 3, which is my personal favorite. I feel like we should have changed this one for Willow because I know that we don't even use this. But if you were suddenly to remove CVs from your current hiring process, what would that look like?
Yeah, okay. Well, we can obviously flip that one.
Swap it.
We don't ask for CVs
At
in
all.
Willow naturally. We've never asked for CVs. Here's an interesting one. So we are today a team of 33 and asked for CVs from those 33 people. What's really interesting about not asking for CVs is the candidates, because it's like we said earlier, it's like an accepted global currency for jobs. Candidates, when we say we don't need your CV, are typically quite like surprised of like,
Yeah.
hey, do you want my CV, or where should I send my CV? And I still find that really fun.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so natural, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. It's expected. We know.
Some
We go
people
through the
do.
motions.
Some people do send their CVs in. I mean, I have some of the team's CVs in a folder because they've sent them. I have to put them somewhere, but I never ask for them. None of us do. And you don't need them either. That's the beauty of it, right? We've been, like I said, operating for 6 years. It hasn't created any challenges because I do hear some employers will say, "Hey, but we need CVs for our records, or we need CVs for our ATS, or we need CVs for a certain part of our process." You don't. Um, you just need to change the way that you do things.
Absolutely.
An organization is designed in a specific way, and if it's designed to accept CVs, then of course you need CVs. But let's design that out. You don't need to continue with the way that it works at the moment.
Hmm.
Everyone's hiring processes are different.
Yeah.
And many people that we speak to can design the process completely differently. They just remove the CV step, or they replace the
Yeah.
CV step with something like Willow, or they replace the CV step with a form or something. There's so many ways of
So
just
many
flipping
ways.
it out. And
So many
then
ways.
your proof of record. So if you do need a record of that candidate, you can use something like Willow. You can literally download the videos and store them in a
That's the
file.
proof.
If you have like an HR system that needs that. So many HRISs will need things,
Yeah.
like artifacts from the hiring
Yep.
process. And there is no better artifact from the hiring process than a video of the candidate, right? Then we can say, look, we spoke to that person on this date. Here's what they said, and here's why we decided to hire them. So
Absolutely.
there's so many easy ways of changing it, and it's just about designing the process in the first place to accept that you
Yes.
don't need CVs. And that's really obviously one of the exciting things about what the kind of world that we're in today. What we're seeing today is obviously every business system is being challenged and changed, and hiring should just be one of those processes that you're challenging and changing.
Absolutely. And that actually leads me to our wild card question. All right. So, I mean, if you've been following Ewan, if any of the listeners or watchers right now have been following Ewan and Wello for a while, he has been talking a lot about the idea that CVs aren't enough and that hiring needs better signals. And you just alluded to that as well. So, and now you're going to show that in practice because actually we're going to be on BBC's Tech Life this July. And one of the things that I was really interested in hearing from you was when a hiring team at like an enterprise scale, let's say, starts using a tool built to surface real candidate signals instead of just relying on what's on paper. What do you think changes first or will change, and what do you think takes longer to shift than people can expect?
Okay. Let's start with I mean, it's a really good point. As let's start with the most immediate change that most organizations will feel is that they have a lot more data than they used to have on candidates. So previously, every candidate looks like two sides of a piece of paper. And that's, you can read that in a couple of minutes. And
Yeah.
that's pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
And that's all there is to that candidate. Whereas when you use something like Willow, you have potentially millions of data points. You have so much data that you almost don't even know what to do with it. And that can be, if you don't think about it, quite an overwhelming place to be.
Yes.
Um, and that's been one of the interesting and exciting changes that we've sort of experienced over the past few years. We've been helping employers all over the world collect huge, huge amounts of video content from candidates, which is amazing. We've basically given them everything that they could ever need to make better hiring decisions. But one of the challenges that comes with that is that we've given businesses millions and millions of content and data, which they have to do something with. And the beauty
Mm.
of Insights is that Insights actually uses AI to help make sense of all of that data. So we're saying, you don't need to be concerned about these millions of data points anymore. Willow Insights is actually going to make sense of all of this data. We're not only going to make sense of it, we're going to present it all to you, and we're going to present it all to you with evidence. We're going to say exactly why every single candidate looks this way, why you should assess them this way. And it's scored against your criteria.
Wow.
So I think Insights is a really interesting thing because it's helping employers, particularly at the enterprise level, cut through the noise, but make sense of the noise more importantly, so that no candidate ever slips through that net anymore. And you got to sympathize with these candidates and with these employers. It's a really tricky time. They're kind of like this, like candidates
Yes.
are applying and they're saying, "Hey, I've got so many applications out there, but I'm not hearing back." And then enterprises are saying, "Hey, we've got so many applications, we can't get back to everyone." And that's the reality of 2026, and that's not gonna go away overnight. So we do have this sort of like, kind of like, I guess it's almost like a perfect storm,
Yeah.
in my view.
Absolutely. Agreed.
There's candidates and employers, and they're really struggling. One of the beauties of what we've built in Insights is that candidates can now be seen for who they truly are,
Mm.
but employers can also see them for who they truly
Yeah.
are at scale.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single candidate can be seen, can be heard, and can be surfaced. And then employers can, more importantly, then look at all that data and all that evidence and make the best decision based on every candidate. No matter whether there's 1,000 candidates applying to your role or 10,000 candidates applying to your role. With Insights, you can actually assess every single one of those 10,000 and find the candidates that are right for you and your organization. That was not possible before. That wasn't even possible a year ago.
Yeah.
It's for the better. I mean, there's no downsides as far as that matching is concerned. Like, we're taking huge amounts of data points from candidates. We're taking the requirements of an employer and we're matching them and saying, "Hey, these people
Together.
look good for you."
Amazing. It's amazing. What I love about this too is I think that everybody knows that having a human in the loop for the hiring process is so important, but nobody knows how to actually design for that. And nobody knows, like, because everything that's available has just been like, attach this AI to your ATS, put this on, to deal with all of, like, add this AI to deal with all of the mass volume of applicants you're having. But you're not really surfacing the data you need to against what you need in the company, to your point with that blueprint idea, right? So I think it's just like, if we talk about actually making hiring more human, this feels like the right way to go about it, because you're still having somebody that's determining the end goal based off of the best amount of data available.
Absolutely. We're giving employers all the data and all the evidence that they could ever need to make the decisions that they want to move forward with. And the interesting thing that we're seeing, I mean, it's only been a few months since we launched Insights, but the interesting things that we're seeing is that employers are seeing candidates that they would never have seen before.
Really?
So we're actually surfacing new talent that was potentially being missed. And it was being missed not because the employer was incompetent, but because the employer just didn't know where to look. They had too many candidates to look at. They had too many data points, confusing, noisy signals, and they were spending too much time in the ATS sifting through CVs, resumes, cover letters, DMs from LinkedIn. It was a whole mess, and
Everything.
really, in a lot of cases, the candidates that were being seen were the ones that just made the most noise.
Absolutely. And also, I was going to say, this is maybe why we actually default back to bias, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's just easier to go this way. And we know that our brains love a good shortcut. But thank you so much, Euan, for joining me on this week's edition of Looks Good on Paper. It's been great hearing the ethos and understanding where everything has come from. And I'm sure our listeners are going to really appreciate your viewpoints.
Thanks for hosting me today. Nice to join you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me on Looks Good on Paper, powered by Willo. If today's 3-question sprint gave you something new to think about, hit subscribe and share with your network, because in hiring, and really in life, it's never just about what looks good on paper.